Hey there guys, Obsidian Chill. I've got another video for today. Now this one's going to be the starting of a new series I'm going to start. Basically any power set I switch to or any power set I've been, either on this server or the US side, I'm going to make a I'm going to call it the ultimate guide, but essentially it's just an overview of that power, both the DPS side and the support side, so tank or troll. Not sure if I'll be going healer, I don't know, I don't have a gear set for healer yet. But essentially it's going to be similar to my controller loadout guide. It's just going to be based on those specific powers. I know I didn't really go over the DPS side of things, and some people have asked for that. So basically I'll be going through all that. I would have had the Gadget one, but I deleted some of the footage by mistake, so I'll have to re-record that. I'm going to be doing a mental one soon, basically the normal rotation versus the 2PI, which one's better, etc. So this one's going to be going through fire first. I'm going to touch on the DPS side of things. I'm not going to go through individually how to spec the power sets. There's enough videos, and you guys have to know by now what to do for specking wise. It's just a waste of time to go through all that. Obviously, you're going to take your crits first. If your might power set, you take might first, then prec, etc. Nothing like that's going to change. As in terms of fire for specking, it really doesn't change whether or not you're doing a raid or an alert. It's pretty much the exact same powers that are taken. Immolation tree, ignition tree. The only differences you might have is if you don't use overheat, which I'll be going through in a sec. You might take, wildfire instead of that, or some other or supercharge, something like that. But I'm going to be going through why I use that certain things. So basically, going through for the loadout for DPS is going to be overheat, burning termination, inferno, fire weapon, phase dodge, and fire burst. This is the raid loadout, and I'll show you the rotation in a moment. The raid for fire is very power heavy. And essentially the rule of thumb with fire is the time you're not spent in fire burst is a damage loss. So basically you want to use all the other powers as quick as you can, clip what you can to get back into fire burst, because the time you're not spent doing that is a huge damage loss, because fire burst is basically your main damage, the rest are just kind of dots and supplement to that. The reason why I use overheat is sets up a unique burning dot, as opposed to, say, if I use wildfire and then clip wildfire with burning termination, that's the same dot, they're not going to stack, so basically you just get the first tick of wildfire, which isn't really that good. The only advantage using wildfire is because the damage loss from the enemies not being burning, say if you go to a group of ads to the next one and you don't have inferno, don't have burning termination on cooldown, you could use wildfire, then go into fire burst, you're not losing that much damage, because to get your volatility and get your AM going, the enemies have to be on fire. But that doesn't happen too often, and basically since wildfire would just be the first tick anyway, and then the dots wouldn't stack, there's not much point using it. You could use a robot psychic if you don't want to use that heavy power, or a supercharge. The supercharge I would recommend if you want to go for pure damage would be in the immolation tree reignition. That also sets up a unique burning dot that's going to stack with everything else. As a 25%, the dot doesn't hit like a truck or anything like that, but it gives you another tool to use, another clipping tool, a bit of health back for boss fights. If you want to lose that in alerts for non-heal runs, stuff like that, then you can use that as well. The damage, it's not terrible, but it's not great. It's just stacking burning dot, so it's not that terrible. Now I use overheat first, and clip that with burning termination, sets up unique dot as well. The advantage of using overheat, say if you have like KCT, if Lex is overheating and then the ad spawn, overheat will spread to those enemies. So basically the dot will spread anything within range, which is very nice. And then basically the exact same as everyone else, Inferno, fire weapon, I use phase dodge just to clip it, because I use I'll show you in a moment, I use the repair bot to clip the first burning termination clip. You don't have to use phase dodge. Obviously that's going to contribute to it being very power heavy, but if you're looking for the max potential into a raid, this is going to be loaded to do it. Now in alerts is going to be a bit different. It's essentially the same thing, except I use robot sidekick, because obviously you're not going to have the power for phase dodge, because so many alerts now run without trolls, and basically just flame cascade. Now another reason that contributes to fire being so power heavy is the inconsistency of volatility. It's not the most stable power back mechanic. Sometimes you get power back, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you against Macho is not consistent. Flame Cascade is very consistent power back return. That's what you want to use in solos, duos, as well, since there's no cast time on it. It's not like Fire Burst, you have to wait for 2 seconds for the damage. It's up front loaded damage, similar to like Arctic Gust, just doesn't hit as hard. So Flame Cascade is and it's max range too, where Fire Burst is more melee mid-range. So Flame Cascade is your other go-to power. If you can't use Fire Burst, you use Flame Cascade. That's how it works. And I use Robust Sidekick just for a little supplementary damage. And I'll be going into the rotations next. Rotation-wise, it's going to be Overheat, that first power, clip with Burning Intimidation, then Repair Bot, Jump Clip, and then Inferno, Fire Weapon, Phase Dodge, Weapon Cancelled into Fire Burst. And then basically you're just repeating from that. Okay, to touch on the tanking side of fire, tanking is a bit different from the other power sets. Basically, when you're not blocking, you're dead. We have no sort of extra mitigation like Ice's buff defense, no damage mitigation like Earth. Our self heals aren't as strong as Rage. Essentially, we buff our health as high as it can, and then we just block through everything. And we do have self heals to mitigate the healing that we receive. But essentially, the time you're not spent blocking, you're taking massive unnecessary damage. We'll go into the specking here because fire is one of the toughest ones to spec, as well as the one that requires the most skill points just to hit everything. The first thing you want to do is take the crit heals in the power trees. So there's crit healing magnitude and crit healing, what's it called, chance? Yeah, crit healing chance. Those are the two ones you want to take first. You want to take those all the way down the trees, just like you would for a healer. That's going to help not only your self heals, but the healings you receive from the healers themselves. Next point, you want to max out as much Dom as you can. And a few of the trees here, you won't think this is Dom because you'll think it's a troll like the power critical chance, but you do get 9 points of Dom per one of these, so you definitely want to take that rather than just taking the Dom and the smaller trees down here, just the 3 ticks. But basically, once you max out your Dom, then you want to go health, taking them at the same time, just increase. You want to get that health pool as high as you can, because the way fire works is that every time you hit a power, basically it could be a tank power, iconic power, doesn't matter, our health pool gets buffed by 60%, as well as for every point of Dom, you get 2.2 health on top of that. So that's what's going to help bring our health pools up high enough to survive all these heavy hits while blocking. So essentially, the order goes: crit heals, crit healing magnitude, crit healing chance, then you're going to take your Dom, then you're going to take all your health. Then if you've got enough skill points left over, you can spec into resto, defense, stuff like that. And then at the bottom you always can take health Dom. That's going to be obvious. Those are going to be weapon mastery ones. In terms of weapon mastery, you don't really need to take anything. I use bow just because it's different, and I like how fast the block breaker is in the lunge. So I use the smoke bomb mastery. You don't really need to be doing weapon attacks as a tank unless if they're stunned or whatever, encased. So don't be worrying too much about weapon mastery, just the trees themselves. In terms of your generator, it's going to look like this. Mod-wise, you want to take your health pool, obviously, to max that. So all health 8.3 support's going to be all Dom 8.3s. Now, there's that misconception that resto is very important for fire tanks because of the healing. Resto helps, but it is not as important as Dom and health. Resto, the only thing that resto does is increases the base heal number by, I think it's like 4 resto equals 1% or something like that. So it's not like it incredibly boosts our heals, it just boosts the base number of our heals, if that makes any sense at all. But think of it like Resto helps, but it doesn't help as much as Dom and Health. So it's always going to be Health. It's always going to be Dom, Health, and Resto. Resto actually helps ice tanks more than do fire. So Resto is more like icing on the cake if you've got enough skill points to spec into those. But if you don't, then sorry, the affinity mods are going to be Dom as well. Now I looked into getting Health with these instead. I still think you get more health pool from the 2 dominance ones as opposed to the 2 health. And your rejuvenating escape would be just your small heal and your breakout. And number 8 doesn't really matter. I take the crippling stances when every time they hit you, you have a 10% chance to stun them. Most people aren't going to have 8 pieces of elite gear. The 6 is very important because you're obviously being group breakouts a lot. So aim for that one. In terms of the loadout, it's gonna, like I said, look pretty. It's gonna look pretty much exactly the same as this, except one power could be substituted. A fire tank, you're always gonna have backdraft. You're always gonna have burnout. You're always gonna have burning determination. You're always gonna have stoked flames, and you could argue this, but you always should have internal flame as well. The power that you can substitute is in flame, and that's going to be depending on the situation. I like to run in flame because it's a great CC move. It's a great knock-up. Using flame, that sets everything burning. Then you hit backdraft to get the heal back as well as pull everything back, so it's a juggle. That's a very good combination. And flame is a bit power heavy, so you may, depending on the troller situation or depending on the raid, you may not be able to use or spam in flame. So immolation is your next best bet, but that has no CC knock-up. You still get the control resistance and inflicts burning, which is important because all your self heals are based on if the target is burning. So if they're not burning, then you're not going to really get those heals back, which is going to be obviously very helpful. Another possibility would be mesmerizing lasso, because backdraft, it's similar to Earth's epicenter. The range is not great on it. It's like what, 10 to 15 meters, something like that. But backdraft is not going to work in all situations, especially in Dark Side War Factory. You're going to need a stronger self taunt, which is what lasso is, just like fireball is the other one. Ice is frost knife, stuff like that. So lasso, it's not a purely single target. It's technically an AoE pull. It's not going to AoE pull, but it's basically if there's 2 targets beside each other, if you hit lasso, you're going to pull one, but you're going to aggro the other. It's kind of a weird power like that, where it says it's a single target taunt, but it's really not if they're standing beside each other. But it's your long range pull. You're going to need that. So there's not every raid that you need that in, so you substitute it out. But that's essentially it. I've seen a lot of tanks run absorb heat. That's really stupid. Don't do that. You can sub in another cheap move like an the other one, sorry, I don't spec it, but I would for like SM, would be Hard Light Shield. Because of our higher resto and Dom, Hard Light Shield's like 100% resto, and I forget the percentage of Dom, but basically that would be your shield. I would use it just for SM, unless you're really like low skill point base and you don't have the stats, then you could use it. But essentially, if you're a tank loadout, it should look exactly the same as this, but you have one power to substitute. If it's a pull you need, if it's a cheaper power move just to keep things burning, but you should always have these other powers. The other reason why, burnout, that's a breakout, burning termination, breakout, and internal flame is a breakout immunity as well. So that's 3 breakout, not that you're going to spam internal flame, but it's just helpful that when you use it, obviously to save yourself, everyone else has immunity too. And then as well for your utility belt, I use chronomatic emitters. You don't have to spam these every single time, but you should really as a tank have access to them. This is going to be a must. Is going to be your PV breakout trinket. You can get them. What's it? Gotham Wastelands, Amazon like Under Siege, Gotham Under Siege. One of those 2 places. They're 30 marks of victory, but that is a very must. You could use, obviously, the health trinket's going to be a must, 5,000 health added to your 60% total. And then supply drop, the tank CC trinket, because that gives a bit of health and Dom. Sidekick, you can substitute basically what that's going to be, but you definitely need the PV trinket and you definitely need the health trinket. Everything else is kind of your prerogative, what you want to run. The whole premise behind fire is that you want to be blocking the entire time that you can, so you don't really want to be rolling as much. You don't really want to have to reposition a bunch of times to get room for backdraft. You want to avoid those situations at all possible, and basically just keep your immunities for when you get block broken. So if you get block broken, you're knocked down, here Bernard, back up. Hit Permutation, Burn Interpretation, back up. PV Trinket, back up. And then back right into blocking. What I said before, say you're in KCT running down the hallway or BBS or something like that, you can lunge in, inflame, block there once you're kind of getting sorted out, backdraft to pull them back in, back to blocking, and just kind of like that. Like it's not rocket science really. You just be blocking as much as possible. Now Stoke Flames is going to be your strongest self-heal. You don't really want to spam that. You want to keep that for special moments. And what I mean by that, say you get knocked down or block broken by a boss or an ad, whatever, and you take a lot of damage on the way back up. Say your health drops like half. Then I would hit Stoke Flames back into block, or Stoke Flames clip by Rejuvenation, and then back into blocking. So you've got both your self heals running, just in case the healer doesn't catch you right away, or say the healer's down. Those are going to be the two heals that you want to use, because the heals from Backdraft and Burnout, they're instant heals and heals over time, but they're not going to be that strong. They're not like your main heals. That's going to be Stoke Flames and Burning Termination to some degree. And because of a breakout, you don't really want to keep that on constant cooldown just for heals. You want to gauge on what the healer is going to be able to give you back. Because if you get a situation where you're knocked down, you can't get back up right away, you're going to be taking massive damage because you've wasted your powers just to self-heal rather than keep them for a breakout. That's why I always keep this PV trinket just in case I need it. So basically you have 3 breakouts. Burnout would be like your self-heal, and then kind of keep Burning Termination depending on when you need it. A lot of it's a judgment thing. You don't know how hard this stuff is going to hit you. I should say actually, for example, like my health pool right now, I'm sitting about 67,000 buffed. And I should have gone to it before. Always take the all natural soda, because you don't want to take Dom, don't want to take Resto. It's all about health, how large your health pool is. So take the all natural soda. So now I'm sitting at about 36,000 health unbuffed. I take that with a grain of salt because my OP items is still modded for DPS. Same with my hands, they're modded for DPS. So if I wanted to pure tank, obviously those would be higher. But if I buff myself now, I'm seeing over 70,000 health pool with that all natural. But that's all it is. A lot of it's personal judgment and just getting used to it. Like, you don't know, because fire depends on the healers a little bit more often than some of the other tanks. You have to base on how strong the healer is, how self-healy you have to get. A lot of the times I keep Stoke Flames completely off cooldown, don't even need it unless I really get block broken or feel like there's a time coming up where I'm going to need it. It's kind of Internal Flame's obviously going to be your oh shit button. Internal Flame, 15 seconds, you get healing back for every single tick that you take. So say the Dark Side War Factory, all the ads in the first and second rooms, KCT when those ads spawn on the second bosses, that's going to be your best bet to hit, as well as you get the immunity. So that's Internal Flame's like your oh shit, the healer's dead or knocked out, you need to get back up. That gives you 15 seconds of freedom, because basically you can't die through Internal Flame unless it's only like a boss. If there's lots of ads around, you're not going to die from Internal Flame. It's almost impossible. Unless obviously it's like a one-shot. And I'll go through a little clip of tanking here in a sec here. Once again, tanking, there's a lot of it's not like a right or wrong thing. There's a right or wrong loadouts, but how you use it, there's different situations you can do it. It's all just getting used to it. It's just go into a raid just to practice, because you need to know how hard the bosses are going to hit, how hard their attacks are going to hit, getting used to it, stuff like that. Like you can't be told how to do it. You have to experience it.